Mr. Secretary, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Always good to see you, Sean. How have you been?
I'm great. But I want to know how we're doing collectively as a country right now. Give me your assessment of what's going on in the region right now with respect to Iran and how we're prosecuting this.
Yeah, so as everybody knows, those that are following the news, we've launched strikes on Iran. We have dominance at sea, that, being a navalist as I am, we're prosecuting this in a manner consistent with our interests. As you well know, having served with me before, I've been saying this for the last 40 odd years. Iran is a true threat to the United States, to our democracy. And they've continued to show that efforts, to undermine our interests around the world. So this is long overdue.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. These guys went in, fired off a ton of missiles, took out a lot of sites. When you're on a ship right now in that area, in the Persian Gulf, what are your rules of engagement post this? Is it wait till we get fired on? Is it they give you orders? Like, what is the posture of a lot of our current ships and sailors in the region right now?
Well, the command authority is Central Command, and then through NAVCENT and Fifth Fleet, will continue to guide the direction of those fleet assets. Of course, they have to be prepared to defend against any attacks by Shaheeds or anything else, and they've got the capability of doing that. But again, they'll continue to engage at a rate that the Central Command and the overall command authority directs.
So the president yesterday, and I just want to make sure I read this, it says, this is what President Trump said: effective immediately, I have ordered all United States Development Finance Corporation to provide at a very reasonable price political risk insurance and guarantees for the financial security of all maritime trade, especially energy traveling through the Gulf. Obviously, I think that's pretty obviously means oil. But then he said, if necessary, the United States Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible. No matter what, the United States will ensure the free flow of energy to the world. The United States' economic and military might is the greatest on earth. Is this a task that the Navy is up to?
Oh, absolutely. Although it'll be extremely sporty going through there, and we will have to knock out whatever defenses Iran has directed to those straits. But as you know, it's very narrow going through there. So we definitely, put our fleet assets at risk doing that. But again, that's the only way that Iran can apply pressure around the world is to affect, energy prices.
So is this what are the threats? Like, we keep talking about destroying the Iranian Navy. Is it these small boats? Is it missiles being shot from land? Like, what are the threats that we still need to take out or be aware of that's not allowing that free flow for commercial travel through the strait?
Yeah, so the Iranian Navy is pretty much non-existent. They have some Mudge-class frigates, but most of their naval vessels are very small patrol boats, and in that, the capability of just harassing us in the straits is there. What's more problematic for us, Sean, are the missiles that are ashore in Iran that are targeting the straits. Again, very narrow space. If they zero in everything on that space, it would make it very difficult for us, even with naval cover, to be moving and escorting tankers through there. One of my classmates was aboard one of the frigates back in the first Gulf War, and will tell you that was always an extremely sensitive operation, as you recall, when we were escorting tankers back then. So here, in an open conflict with Iran, it becomes even more difficult. That doesn't mean we can't do it. We can, and as the president said, we are the greatest Navy in the world. We've demonstrated that last year in the Red Sea with all the attacks by the Houthis, and I'm confident we'll demonstrate that again. And to the best of our ability, we'll keep those straits open.
How big of a threat are drones? That seems to be one of the things that Iran really has stockpiled. Are these drones that can come out of is that really beyond the shore-based missiles, et cetera? Is this a big concern for our Navy?
Yeah, so the Shahed 136 is a one-way attack drone that does about 100 miles an hour. They're very cheap to manufacture, $20,000 to $50,000, per copy. If you swarm anything, it's going to be difficult. The unique opportunity here for the Navy is that we're a moving target. And as you know, Sean, moving targets are much harder to hit. That's why they're going to continue to struggle to engage us because we're underway and they're not. Their success to date has been those that have gotten through beyond the line of defense and have hit stationary targets. So again, would it be problematic? Yes, it will be a challenge, but it's one that the U.S. Navy is definitely up for.
Is it Iran or their proxies that are the biggest concern?
Yeah, I would say Iran, because Iran, we don't know, what their arsenal is and how many of these Shaheeds and different variants they have. They also have other types of ballistic missiles. So, they've got a punch capability, and we need to be mindful of that.
So here's the big question: if how long? I mean, oil prices spiking. I just went by my local gas station last night. It's up 15 cents a gallon.
Yep.
Is this something that we should be prepared for oil prices to go up, or is the Strait something that, based on what you're seeing, that and the past experience of escorting tankers, that this may just take a little while to get a hold of, or should we brace for the next 4 or 5 weeks of potentially higher gas prices?
Yeah, so I would think that we should brace for higher gas prices. I think they're going to go up substantially in the next several weeks. However long this conflict lasts, even if we force open the straits, which again will be a very challenging operation for us to do, still the uncertainty is going to keep prices high, Sean. So I'd be prepared as we move into the spring to be paying $1 or more in addition to the current price for a gallon of gasoline.
While that may hit us hard, one of the things that I have been saying is sort of maybe a silver lining is that between Venezuela and Iran, I've got to think that the Chinese have got to be very worried about what's happening, because they get so much of their oil from Iran and then some from Venezuela. We now effectively kind of have control of both.
Absolutely. I mean, again, as I stated when we began, this is an operation that has been long overdue, and we knew it would rock the energy market. But again, the longer that we prolong engaging Iran directly, they'll continue to undermine our interests, especially in the Middle East, but around the world. They've supplied these Shahed drones to the Russians, who have begun to manufacture them. They've done the same thing with North Korea. I mean, they're definitely this. I would say a key part of the axis of evil. And as far as the oil markets, as it begins to stabilize, the U.S. will have more control, will have more influence. And that does give us a better opportunity to leverage that with our friends, the Chinese.
But if you're the Chinese and you saw what we just did in Venezuela, you saw what we did in Midnight Hammer, and now you see Epic Fury. We've always done these war games. It's open source material about what we would do if Taiwan were invaded. Do you think this gives them pause, where the Chinese are saying, maybe we don't want to do anything because we're now watching the might of the U.S. military and what they can do, and this is now not theoretical. This is real.
Yeah, I mean, they know our capabilities, Sean. They're a much more strategic, a much more formidable potential opponent than anybody else on the face of the earth. If anything, they're watching us to see, how we're engaging, especially in this UAV space where all of this, counter drone efforts are new, to combat. So as part of that, the Chinese are watching. But remember, the Chinese are really good at watching. And when they watch, they keep all their assets in battery, as we say in the Navy, prepared to utilize those when they want to and when they need to. I think the U.S. Navy is the force that's providing the edge, that's keeping Taiwan the free democracy that it is. It's because of those straits and because of our influence, power project there, as well as not only on the surface but subsurface, that the Chinese think twice. That's why they're also So, Sean, in the process of building the largest, most capable Navy in the world. I think I've shared with you and your viewers before, somewhere in the last decade or so, Xi Jinping railed Alfred Thayer Mahan, the influence of sea power upon history, and pivoted the entire Chinese military more towards the maritime sector. That's why they're building aircraft carriers. That's why they're pumping out 2 to 3 frigates a year, a couple destroyers. They want to be a presence on the open seas of the world.
We vote with our wallet every single day of the week in terms of what we buy, what we watch, etc. And I got to tell you, one great company is standing at the front lines of this right now, fighting for freedom for the last 12 years, and that is Patriot Mobile. They don't just deliver top-tier wireless service. They are activists like me who truly try to make a difference in what we stand for and how that impacts everything. Patriot Mobile offers prioritized premium access on all 3 major networks. You get unbelievable service, the same speed, the same coverage as all the major carriers. That means same speeds, dependable nationwide coverage. It's all backed by 100% nationwide US-based customer service. They've got unlimited data plans, mobile hotspots, international roaming. But here's the cool part. All of their profits, or I shouldn't say all of them, a portion of their profits support great groups that are veterans-based, Second Amendment-based, pro-life-based. They've been a great partner to me. I love it. So if you want to switch your cell phone over to not only get great service, but support great causes, take a stand today and go to patriotmobile.com/Spicer, patriotmobile.com/Spicer, or 972-PATRIOT. Use the code word Spicer in either case, and you will get a free month of service. Again, that's patriotmobile.com/Spicer. Speaking of presence in aircraft carriers, the French sent an aircraft carrier towards the Persian Gulf. Is that helpful? Is it needed? What kind of coordination happens when something like that arrives on station?
Well, when we were in Afghanistan and, part of ISAF with the NATO forces who were there help us, all that was coordinated. I'm sure there's some coordination going on through NATO, but at this point, a little late to the game. I'm not sure what France's interest is. Perhaps they're, it's just a play to say, hey, we're here. We have some capabilities. No, we don't need them. Let's be honest. You and I both know that.
Yeah, no, I know. That's why you confirm what I thought, which is, hey, thanks for showing up 5 days later.
Yeah. Same with the UK, right?
That was worse. You got to admit that the idea of, you can't use our airspace. Our air bases, and then after a smashing success, say, well, now you can. It's like, thanks for nothing.
Literally, I never comment on any social media sites at all. And I was so angry the other night. I was a liaison officer to the Royal Navy. My son's godfather is a retired Royal Navy Commodore. So, and my name, Braithwaite's pretty Scottish English. So, the special relationship that we have with them has really been damaged over this. And so I opined on this guy's site because, he's challenging us for the Falklands engagement in that we didn't allow them to use, our bases. And, I had to teach him a lesson in history about how Ronald Reagan and the U.S. Navy were the ones who provided the avenue so that the Brits could win in the Falklands. So, there be it.
But aside from your role as Secretary of the Navy, you're also an ambassador. So let's just put that hat on for a second. What is it like? You've got some issues, especially in the UK, where we have a special relationship. Is there a little bit of bridge building again that has to happen to say, hey guys, you love to lecture us about what we should do with our military and our funding for NATO, but when the going got tough, the British weren't there for us?
Well, Sean, we're the ones that invested in our military since World War II. We're the ones who created the most formidable military in the world, right? And that is an investment that the American taxpayers made, but it was at a cost. We're suffering a deficit because of that. So when I was ambassador in Norway, I was pushing the Norwegians, who sit on a $1.4 trillion sovereign wealth fund, to actually, embrace and, honor their commitment to go to 2%, now 5% of their GDP towards defense spending. We can't continue to subsidize the defense of the Western world and democracy. And I think that's what the president is trying to get that message across. I think Secretary Rubio did a great job the other day. Like, this is the new dawn, a new day. You need to step up. You need to modernize your forces. We're still committed to NATO, yes, but a fair NATO where everybody's contributing their fair share.
We've had a very successful last. There you go.
There you go.
There you go. We know what time it is. As far as this campaign has gone, it's been very successful in terms of mission accomplishing, what we've accomplished, taking out their assets or whatever. should we be prepared? And I know the president has tried to condition us a little for this. I know loss of life, we're at 6 right now. But in terms of naval and aircraft assets, should we worry about potential damage to our ships and our military assets?
Well, it depends, what our overall objective is, right? If it's regime change, we've taken a step towards that. And you have to ask yourself, what the Ayatollah was thinking a week or so ago before he lost his life. I mean, let's go back in history. Noriega, Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, right? Now Maduro being in jail, and now the Ayatollah losing his life. I think a lot of these regimes around the world that are, part of the of this evil axis need to take note. And so if our objective is some regime change and to get the IGRC or anybody else to step up and engage with us in a way that's consistent with our interests, and our interests have always been preventing them from having a nuclear weapon, then I think we get to a solution where we don't have to engage ground troops. And let's hope that's our objective, because, if we do engage, I mean, it's a large country, 90 million people, and they've got a formidable army. And they're willing to just commit those people and not worry about the impact on their society at large, which is different for us as a democracy. I mean, every life matters in America. Sadly, for the regime in Tehran, every life doesn't matter. So it would be a extremely difficult. We would win for sure. But it would cost us lives. It would cost us equipment. And it would be very hard for the American people to accept that. However, and I've said this in several forums. I gave a speech a week or so ago about this. This is the engagement that the United States has always needed to do, because this is the center of all of the efforts to undermine us. And if, God forbid, the Iranians got nuclear weapons, they would give those to their proxies that have no sovereign responsibility. And the next thing you know, our cities would be at risk for a dirty bomb or whatever, which would kill millions of Americans. So what the president has done here is the right military mission, finally.
The last time you were on this show, you proactively, when asked what the greatest threat we face, and I thought you'd say China. You said Iran.
Yes.
There are now lots of people that say, why are we there? What's the president doing? You knew something back then, and I mean, you've known something for a long time, about the threat that Iran poses to the United States. So if somebody's listening right now and saying, I still don't know why we're doing this, explain to them what the threat that we faced was and why it was so important that we take it out.
And so my daughter asked me this question a week or so ago, Sean, and she leans a little to the left. So I'll just put that on the table. But I told her, I said, Grace, she went up to New York a weekend before last, enjoyed, a Broadway play with her friend, and came back. And I said, did you feel safe? And she said, yeah, I felt safe, Daddy. I mean, I'm smart. You've taught me to have situational awareness when I'm on the street. And I said, but you were safe. You felt secure. Yes, I did. Right. I said, that would all change if Iran, our avowed enemy, got nuclear weapons. Sean, I was retired from the Navy, fat, dumb, and happy as a healthcare executive, doing pretty well, when I was so appalled that the Obama administration agreed to the JCPOA, that's when, and I remember talking to you about this, that I got back involved. And I ended up campaigning for President Trump in 2016. And next thing you know, I'm the U.S. ambassador to Norway and later the Secretary of the Navy. It was because of that and that alone that I got back involved in government service, because I knew back when I was a young midshipman and the revolution occurred, right, that the Iranian regime hated the West, not just the U.S., but all of the West. And they were just biding their time until they could get to a point to hurt us. And so everything that has happened bad to us in the last 40 years can be tied back to Iran. Even the Taliban, who's an enemy of Iran, but, I guess when you're somebody who's the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing. I mean, the Iranians were providing all the sophisticated IEDs that took out all our forces in Afghanistan. So that's where it comes back to Tehran and this, radical Islamic regime that hates us. And so you can say what you want in London or Paris, but if The Iranian regime there now, not the Persian people, they're wonderful, right? But this radical Islamic, regime got nuclear weapons. We would see those deployed again through their proxies, in Rome, in Paris, in London, in New York. And it would be very easy for them to do that. That's why Iran is the greatest threat to the United States. The Chinese are a sovereign nation. They have to engage with us in a diplomatic manner. I mean, there's been no diplomacy with Iran, since the revolution in '79. And, we continue to see that. The president tried to engage in, negotiations with him over the last few weeks, telling him, look, I'm amassing a force here. I mean, it's pretty evident, what the intent was, and they still didn't want to negotiate with us. So the Ayatollah lost his life because of that. And hopefully, whoever's in charge in Iran today, right, better wake up, smell the roses, and realize that the United States commitment here is to ensure that Iran can be a peaceful nation and can participate and trade with us and all the rest of it if they agree not to have a path towards nuclear weapons. It's as simple as that.
So when I read this earlier in the show, when Captain Mark Kelly, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, said Trump ripped up the Iran nuclear deal and created this mess. Now he's pushing service members in harm's way with no clear plan and no congressional approval. The American people deserve answers. It sounds to me that you've got the answer.
Well, I know Mark Kelly very well. We served together, right? But I totally disagree with him on this. And I disagreed when I was in Norway with the foreign minister. She gave me max grief over this because we withdrew from the JCPOA. It was the dumbest agreement that the United States has ever made, because you're not dealing with a nation that is being responsible. You were dealing with a nation who was trying to be, covert and just continuing to work towards not nuclear energy, but nuclear warhead capability. That's what we were up against. So whoever doesn't get that doesn't understand the threat that Iran poses to the U.S.
So I mentioned two of your big three hats. I know you've got some personal big hats too, father and husband, all that. But you've been Secretary of the Navy, ambassador, and then obviously admiral in the U.S. Navy overseeing public affairs. Do you think our messaging needs to get sharpened? Because I mean, to me, I'm more with you on this. Explaining to people the existential threat we face, we had an opportunity to take that threat out. I don't know why we wouldn't just lead with that.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right, Sean. I mean, we do need to do a better effort, as a nation, explaining why we do a lot of the things that we do. When I was overseas before, and I'm a fellow at NATO, explaining why Greenland was important, right? I had the Danish mill rep, the general, come over to me like, how can you threaten Denmark over Greenland? I said, so what has Denmark done for Greenland? Have you built any bases? Have you conducted any exercises? Have you done anything to shore up your defenses of Greenland? I said, if anything, the president has now elevated this situation, so now we're discussing it. And we understand the threat, right, of our near-peer adversaries in the Arctic, which I'll tell you, Sean, mark me down for this one. The coming storm will not be over Taiwan. It'll be over the Arctic, because all you got to do, my dear friend and shipmate, is follow the money. There's $15 trillion of rare earth minerals up there, in addition to all kinds of other natural resources. And you and I can talk about that, in another show. But we have got to understand, the aspects of why we're engaged, when we're engaged. And sometimes this administration doesn't do that very well. I think they feel, they have the right to do what they're doing when they do it, and not always communicate the why. And as you and I both know, the why is very important.
So, I agree with you 100% on this, but I think that the question that has to follow is, do we need to raise the Greenland issue again now and say, guys, this is the next battle? Like, we've talked to you about the threat that Iran faced. Like, this is where it's going. I know there was some diplomatic kerfuffle regarding Denmark and Greenland, but the president's right in pursuing this in terms of our strategic interest. Do we need to reignite the battle for Greenland?
Well, no. One of the things that came out of this was elevating the importance of Greenland, right? So now Denmark already all of a sudden sees the importance of this, right? And also the threat that the United States has kind of put on the table, saying, look, if you're not going to defend it, we'll defend it, right? And, we've achieved our objectives there. Instead of it being a debate in the Danish parliament over what our participation would be or our ability to have a footprint in Greenland, now, because of the president's positioning, strategic positioning, they're going to be more than happy to allow us the rights to establish a greater presence in Greenland. They need us, right? They understand that. And frankly, we need to be in Greenland because the Arctic is an area of immense interest. That's why the Chinese are building nuclear capable icebreakers. That's why the Russians have reopened bases in the Kola Peninsula. They have beat us to that space. And so we need to move quickly. And this president understands that. I mean, that was one of the reasons why, Sean, as you well remember, when I was on the transition team and you were in the White House, that I was sent to Norway on purpose because of my background as a former ASW pilot and a retired admiral to put emphasis on the Arctic. Because no other administration, right or left, had ever really stopped to think about the importance of what the Arctic could mean to the world.
Yeah. And that's the importance. I think that's where the messaging comes in, explaining why it matters in Iran, explaining. And you're right. I mean, we've elevated the Greenland understanding because it is the future. And I know sometimes it's not.
Most people don't know 58,000 people in Greenland, right? So before this ever happened, back in the first administration, the Chinese were already there, Sean, selling their same wares as they've done in Sri Lanka and all across the African continent. We'll come in. We'll build your ports, build your railroads, build your airports. You don't need a relationship with Denmark. You have nothing in common with Denmark. You should declare your own sovereignty, become an independent nation, and allow us to bankroll everything, right? That was happening, right? So why wouldn't Mr. Trump, who's a real estate guy, say, hey, you don't want to defend it, we'll buy it from you, right? Oh my God, the world came apart in Europe over that, if you recall. But that was the underlying reason. Again, we just didn't communicate that well enough.
I agree. Secretary, Ambassador, Admiral Braithwaite, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate your insight.
And friend, take care.
Add that to the thank you, sir.
All right, bye now.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.